and welcome. It's the 5th of September 2014. You know, I had a moment of clarity yesterday. I think I figured it all out. You know, when that penny drops, that moment you have where you figure it out. What am I talking about? I'm talking, of course, about Nato and what it is. And, you know, I don't believe anyone else has ever spoken of Nato in this way, which I'm going to in a moment, but it's not always blatantly obvious what NATO is, or any other organisation such as NATO, the IMF, etc, etc. But here's what suddenly dawned on me yesterday. You see, we've got the Eurofighter in the background, the Typhoon jet at the doorway or the foyer to where all these world leaders are going to be meeting. The reason why it was strategically placed there, fully armed, is because it is a symbol of what NATO is all about. That is one of its products that it sells, and it is nothing more than a shoddy, dodgy security company, and it is selling security. That's all NATO does. It's like an alarm company. You know, it preys on the fear of other countries. If you don't buy this alarm in your street, you're likely to get burgled. And NATO is exactly doing that. They're saying if you're not a partner of NATO, then you're risking threat of being burgled, or you're risking being attacked by terrorists. But the thing is that after the 1980s, there wasn't really a threat for NATO. When the Soviet Union collapsed, there was no longer a purpose for NATO, and that meant that all the countries that was part of NATO at that time were almost certainly going to stop subscribing to NATO and giving their country's wealth over for that security. But what NATO did was generate, time after time, bogeymen. The Iraq War, there was no weapons of mass destruction. The bombing on Libya. You know, we've got now the Ukraine, which we know the CIA went in there and infected the government on it. And then now they're blaming Russia, you see, and they're saying they're using all this as a means to say that NATO is still worthy of support. You need to be still in this club, and if you're not, you could quite possibly be on the receiving end of terrorists and other rogue nations such as Russia, etc, etc. It is nothing more than providing a means to sell what NATO does. And like I say, that is why they strategically position and place their products at the foyer door of such an expensive, ludicrously costing vehicle like the Typhoon that ran over budget several times and was a burden to most European countries that was part of that project. NATO is nothing short or no different than a cheap, corrupt security company, and it generates fears for all to justify its survival. Have a listen, if you don't believe me, right, to this guy's interview. A few moments in, you'll hear him talk about the threats that justify countries needing the security that NATO offers. If you don't believe me, have a listen to what this guy says straight on in at the beginning of this, and this was done on the first day of NATO's summit.
Good morning. Our NATO summit here in Wales will be one of the most important summits in the history of our alliance. A crucial summit at a crucial time. We are faced with a dramatically changed security environment To the east, Russia is attacking Ukraine. To the southeast, we see the rise of a terrorist organization, the so-called Islamic State, that has committed horrific atrocities. To the south, we see violence, insecurity, instability.
So like I say, within 56 seconds of this man speaking, he's talked about the Ukraine. He doesn't mention the fact that the West supported the overthrow of a government in the Ukraine which started the instability off in the first place. He then moves on to talk about Russia. You know, we've seen the West accused Russia of, when that plane was shot down over the Ukraine, MH17, we've seen the West, without even conducting an investigation, accused Russia straight out of the gate that they was responsible for the shooting down of a passenger airplane, when it was found out later on that it was a Ukrainian fighter jet that shot it. And we don't have to talk about, you know, the details that the plane was diverted over the area and told to reduce altitude before it was shot down. What NATO is about. Oh, let's not forget, you know, he talks about the South, the insecurity in the South, and, you know, what insecurity? You never mentioned the countries. You just said that there was insecurity there. You see, guys, what NATO are doing is deliberately causing trouble in the world to justify selling their security policy. And this security policy comes at an incredible cost. Absolutely incredible cost. And we should stop this. We should tell our governments that we don't want to waste trillions of pounds on this security package that creates, you know, holes in our own security purposely to justify selling us the security in the first place. We should tell them that, as opposed to our government spending the money on rubbish like that junk in the background there, that we would rather it spent on hospitals, on schools, on education, on, you know, roads, you know, infrastructure that we can all benefit from, not on weapons of mass destruction, because that is what the Typhoon represents. Guided bombs and missiles being dropped on innocent human beings wherever they are in this world. We're not needing to defend any of our countries in the West from these people. Iraq isn't attacking the United Kingdom or any other NATO country. Afghanistan isn't attacking us. It's supposed to be defensive purposes only. And here, who is doing the attacking? Who is sending bombs and troops to all these other countries? This is what I'm talking about. That moment of clarity where you figure it out. And this isn't the only organisation, of course. We know, or some people are starting to become aware of it, that the IMF is not a friend of any country. It is a business, just like NATO, that has a straw in the public purse, sucking out the money. And when the IMF are called in because a country states it is going bankrupt, the IMF will lend that country money, but as soon as it takes the loan out for that country in need, it looks at the country's books, and the first thing that goes is the infrastructure, the public services. The hospitals start to be shut down because it cannot afford to pay the IMF off and keep those hospitals going. It cannot afford to pay the interest that the IMF demand. They are not already parts of our government, NATO and the IMF. They are businesses. lucrative businesses and very ruthless businesses that destroy infrastructure. Either way, you can have NATO bomb a country to the ground, or you can have the IMF bleed a country out to the ground, and the same effects are the same from either one. It's time people started to wake up to this. You've only got to ask yourself, do you want your taxpayers' money to go on a Typhoon jet or another military piece of hardware, or do you want it to go on something of benefit to yourselves within your own countries? Because these people need calling out for what they are. They are cheap ass salesmen selling a security product. And if you don't buy the product, they give you, reasons that you should, that they have invented themselves. I'm talking about ISIS. We know ISIS was funded by America and other Western countries, and it is the creation of a bogeyman for all NATO countries to give over their money and wealth to NATO so that they can feel protected. And it's bullshit, and it's got to stop. Guys, it would be nice if a few more people would support this channel, because I believe that you agree with me on the topics that we talk about on this channel are relevant, and if more and more people became aware of what we're talking about on this channel, I'm sure we'd be in a better position to stop this corruption going on. They meet behind closed doors. They utilise taxpayers' money without their consent in their pre-elected governments that make the decision that the public's taxpayer will go towards companies like this. What I'm saying is, we need support on this channel. Some financial support, and not just a one-off, it needs to be regular. Because there isn't just YouTube in the world that we can put this information out. But unfortunately we do live in a monetary system, and in order to get some headway in this, we need some backing. And it isn't just my channel that talks about subjects like this. There are other channels, and there are really only a few, but they need support, and regular support. So guys, on the back of this important breakthrough I've had, what I'm saying, guys, is if you can support financially this channel and some of the projects even that this channel does, I'm sure that could be of benefit to you. If not immediately, it could be benefit to other people. That's all I'm going to say, guys, on this video. I say as always, be safe. It's always worth preparing. And bye for now.